down to Florida to look for possible part-time snowbirding opportunities. We're getting close to retirement age, so we thought we'll go down to Florida, ran into a church. They turned us on to an organization called the Legacy House that deals with young ladies aging out of foster care. We got involved with them. We fell in love with the kids.
One of us said, we could do this.
And we had apartment buildings. It just seemed like maybe God's saying something here. We seemed to have a kind of a running start. If this was the way that, God kind of wanted us to proceed, we kind of got some housing for these girls already. Why don't we bring their vision up to Ohio? Because I've never heard of anything like this.
Yeah. We help young ladies aging out of foster care transition into adult living. Typically, the goal is foster care is to be a temporary thing for these kiddos. Unfortunately, that's the exception. And at the end of the day, it ends up being a permanent thing.
When they age out, they're kind of on their own. So, and just ill-equipped to handle society. Strains of compassion is sort of the last resort when all other things that they've tried have failed, and the county has tried and failed. The plan was to, as tenants' leases expired and they moved on, we would move the girls in. And
for free?
Yes, Strains picks up the tab.
I don't know at that time if it occurred to us that what we were sacrificing.
Thought that we were going to get these girls who came from impoverished backgrounds, and we were just going to love them to health. And our experience has shown us, and what we've learned in the process, is that there is so much more to this. No matter how these kids appear on the outside, 100% of kids in foster care or who are in the adoption agencies have been traumatized. 100%. Every kid is in there because of trauma that they have suffered.
That very week, I get my first contact with this girl. She was coming out of juvie jail. She had been charged with recruiting for sex trafficking.
She comes from 3 generations of incarceration, drug use, drug overdose, suicide.
And I thought, oh no, this is not the direction that we were thinking. We were thinking we were going to get something a little less severe. I mean, I was scared to death. I feel God saying to me, Rhonda, are you going to do this thing that I called you to do, your way or my way? And I'm still going to cry right this very second because we decided we're going to do it His way. Our next foster kiddo, her mom was pimping her out for her drugs. We weren't prepared for the depth of the story.
1 in 5 kids who are in foster care who age out will be homeless in the age of 24. 1 in 4 will be incarcerated. "89% of the women involved in sex trafficking come from the foster care system."
A really big concern with our kiddos is they are prime candidates for traffickers. Traffickers are looking for people who won't be missed. And that breaks my heart.
Sex traffickers will give them a voice. They can prey on these kids because that's all these kids want is a voice. They want to be heard. They want to know that they matter. And a sex trafficker will let them know all of those things. Yeah. And then down the road, as he grooms them,
or she,
then they find out that there are conditions with that.
Yeah. So some of our kids after us end up on the streets because that's what they know. We've learned to look at success differently. Every time we take a kiddo in is that knowing that we're doing what God has called us to do. And that's success. That's our success. We don't do this for to see any desired result from them. Obviously, we would love to see them learn to make some different choices and that sort of thing. But if that were the case, we would have been done a long time ago. I'm reminded that I'm not doing this for me, I'm not doing this for our kids, I'm doing this for God. And I have to keep that at the forefront of my focus so that I can be who these kids need me to be. And I feel with all my heart that we have a bigger purpose in this thing that we're doing.
Our long-term goal initially was to get these kids to a different place. What we think would be much more effective now is we still want to get these kids to a different place, but we got to get them at a much earlier age. We got to get the parents, and the foster parents, and the adoptive parents, and the soon-to-be parents involved, and caseworkers and agencies. We've got to get everybody on board and just give them the knowledge that they need to be able to handle these kids where they're at. The direction that we're trying to move into is being proactive now, where we want to educate the parents so that they can see these behaviors and understand that these kids are not the behaviors. Their behaviors are their attempts to express a need that's not being met. Part of our proactive approach is the community group that we started at Southbrook called Connecting Families.
You know, God called them to foster, but maybe there's a group of people out there that don't necessarily want to bring these kiddos into their homes, but would like to support the family that is bringing these kiddos into their home. And we can help one child at a time, or we can help people who help one child at a time help lots more children.
If our proactive approach is successful, it'll put Strands out of business. That
would be a victory.
That would be the long-term goal, is to be proactive enough to get enough word out to put the reactive Strands out of business.
Hello everyone. This week we're in the third week of a series that we're going to be doing for almost 2 months called It's Not Just You, about the reality of grief and loss. I got to tell you right now, we were just talking off camera about our dogs, and I can tell you right now, when my dog dies, I am going to struggle. Because grief isn't just about people. It's about a lot of things, and we are finding that out in this season of the COVID-19 restrictions. So take a look at this graph on the screens. If you're joining us for the first time, this will be the first time you've seen this, but we developed this little graph to show that grief can be about paces, rhythms. It can be about paths, certain directions in life, possessions like pets, places, home, church, work, and obviously about people. And grief is not just something that happens to us when we're grieving the loss of someone we love and cared for. It has a time and pain factor depending upon your wiring for everyone, for a lot of different reasons. And I want you to see this today. All loss takes a toll on our mind and body. When you think about COVID-19 and what it's done to us, it takes a toll to lose paces and paths, possessions, and places. Over time, it takes a toll, and then it's always added into any other unresolved grief we have in our life. I want to share with you 4 losses that may be happening to you. I've noticed this year a loss of vitality. I've mentioned to our church that I've aged this year. I feel older. I feel older. And vitality is something that we lose gradually as we get older, but loss can accelerate that. And that is certainly happening in this season for many, many, many people. You may be young enough, you're not feeling it. Some of us, a little more chronologically advanced, are feeling that toll that loss takes. There is the loss of time. When we're young, we think time is limitless. When as a child I laughed and wept, time crept. When as a youth I dreamed and talked, time walked. Then when I became a full-grown man, time ran. Then as the older I grew, time flew. Soon I'll find while passing on, time's gone. There's a toll that it takes when you wake up one day and you go, wait a minute, who's that guy with gray hair on that screen? I can't do what I used to do, loss of vitality, but also I don't have as much time left, and there is a grieving reality to that. When you combine time and vitality, there actually is a combination there that is of great spiritual opportunity because, as Dallas Willard said, as the body decreases and as time decreases, it makes room for the spirit to emerge, for the soul to grow. And that is certainly true. Another one is the loss of companionship. As we go through life, we lose relationships through moves, through disagreement, through death. And this is huge because to live is to love, and to love and live is to lose companionship. And as I said a few weeks ago when I started this series, that's the number one thing I underestimated about ministry was the loss of relationships and what toll that would take upon my being as it would take its toll over time. There's a great story that pictures what the cumulative effect of loss can be, especially with regard to companionship. Some of you may want to look into the book of Ruth. Ruth was actually an ancestor of Jesus of Nazareth. She is in his genealogy, and her story is compelling. Ruth was the daughter-in-law of Naomi. Naomi had a husband, Elimelech, and she had two sons, Malion and Chilion, and she gave her two sons in marriage to Ruth and Orpah. Not Oprah, Orpah. Actually, Oprah was supposed to be Orpah, but they misspelled her name on the birth certificate, and that's why she's Oprah, not Orpah. That's just really hard to say, keep straight. But anyway, she lost her husband, then she lost her sons. And there's this dramatic scene in Ruth chapter 2 where she is talking to Ruth and Orpah and saying, you just need to go home to Moab. You need to go back to your home. And verse 14 of Ruth 2 says, at this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. And verse 18 says, when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And look at this, look at this. Look at what grief does. And the women exclaimed, can this be Naomi? In other words, the name Naomi in Hebrew means pleasantness. Naomi was most likely this just pleasant, peaceful, delightful being. And yet we know that grief takes a toll. And the women are asking, well, this can't be Naomi. And look what she says. She told them, verse 20, do not call me Naomi. Do not call me pleasantness. Call me Mara. Because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. The name Mara in Hebrew means bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Isn't that sad? When I read that, and I read about the toll that grief takes upon us, I ask myself this question: will the reality of life, that life is love and loss, Charlie, will it make you bitter or will it make you better? This is a tough question. This is a tough question. There's so much that happens to us in our mind and body when we are grieving. So much that happens to us. For example, take the loss of an Elimelech, of a spouse, and not even a loss of children as Naomi experienced, but the loss of a spouse. It's a stunning finding that is expressed well by a University of Virginia psychologist by the name of Daniel Wegner. And he talks about the amazing reality that the scriptures speak into of the two will become one flesh in marriage. And the principle in psychology, he calls it, is transactive memory. That what happens when you become close to someone is you have an unconscious sharing of memories. There is a joining of memories. You literally start thinking for one another and you do not even realize it. The old joke about spouses finishing each other's sentences, it's because of this transactive memory reality. He writes, transactive memory is part of what intimacy means. It is the loss of this kind of joint memory that helps to make loss so painful. Widowed people who suffer depression and complain of cognitive dysfunction may be expressing the loss of their external memory systems. They were once able to discuss their experiences to reach a shared understanding. They once could count on access to a wide range of storage in their partner, and this too is gone. The loss of transactive memory feels like losing a part of one's own mind. And we hear spouses who have been married and were deep in love say, I feel like I'm going crazy. We want you to hear in this series, it's not just you. There's a way in which God made us that the Scriptures speak into. The two will become one flesh. One of those amazing stories about loss is in a book called A Grace Disguised. It's written by a theologian by the name of Gerald Sitzer, who one night on a lonely highway in New Mexico, as he, his mother, his wife, and his daughter were coming back from serving on a reservation and doing missionary work, a drunk driver crossed over the center line at a high rate of speed, and immediately he lost 3 generations of women in his family. His mother, his wife, and his daughter died. In his book, A Grace Disguised, I heartily recommend. In it, he writes, loss creates a barren present. As if one were sailing on a vast sea of nothingness, those who suffer loss live suspended between a past for which they long and a future for which they hope. They want to return to the harbor of the familiar past and recover what was lost, or they want to sail on and discover a meaningful future that promises to bring them life again. Instead, they find themselves living in a barren present that is empty of meaning. Oh man, the loss of companionship, the loss of time, the loss of vitality, they take their toll on your mind, on your soul. And there's one more that I believe is taking a toll right now that is none of those, especially upon our students. The other one that is very relevant during this season of COVID-19 is this fourth loss. The loss of idealism. The loss of idealism. You see, we Americans, we have this notion in the American dream that if we arrange our lives correctly, we can control outcomes. And we can live this American dream, this ideal life. We actually look at an interruption to that ideal as not life. And if I can just get this over with, I can get back to life. John Lennon famously wrote, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. Life is love and life is loss. And COVID-19 is actually exposing our idealism. Ecclesiastes 1:18, Solomon wrote these words, for with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. It's true. And I want to speak to you students who are experiencing the loss of so many of your paces and paths and even possessions and places. Realism is idealism that has gone through the fire and gotten purified. But cynicism is idealism that has gone through the fire and gotten burned. Will the losses of life, the ones you're experiencing right now, even the loss of idealism, will it make you bitter or will it make you better? Well, if you're going to grow through this, you have to acknowledge what's happening in your mind and soul. And to do that, you have to be equipped to know that it's not just you. It's not just you. There is a book called Good Grief that states the traditional stages of grief. I want to share these, but I want to do so with a caveat that recent research on grief shows that grief is not as linear as these 10 stages appear to make it. You may jump from stage 2 to stage 9 and back to stage 5 in the same day. Grief is much like a tsunami that can crash into the shore of your being when you least expect it. But I want to show you something through these stages. Stage 1 is when we're in a stage of shock. We are numb. Stage 2, we begin to express emotion. It begins to well and overflow to the surface. Stage 3, we feel depressed and lonely. This can last a long time. Stage 4, we may experience physical symptoms of distress. I mentioned that last week. Your body is going through a rewiring. Stage 5, you may have panic attacks. Stage 6, you may feel guilt, a sense of guilt about the loss. This is where many people can experience survivor's guilt, depending upon whatever tragedy it was that entered their life that created the loss. Stage 7 is when we're filled with anger and resentment, and this can be deep, deep, deep. This is why we have to have hope and grace in our life. Stage 8, we resist returning. We actually resist going back. Stage 9, gradually hope begins to rise like the sun in our lives. It may start as a little pinhole of light, but it begins to grow. And then look at this, stage 10. We then start struggling with the affirmation of reality. Reality. An acceptance of reality as it is now in all of its newness. A book I've been reading this year about this subject matter is a book by McMahan called It's Okay That You're Not Okay, and it's about the loss, the sudden loss of her very vibrant husband in a drowning accident. And McMahan says, our minds work by creating relationships and recognizing patterns. New information comes in and the brain connects it to what we already know. Normally this process is seamless. You never really notice it. In grief, your brain has to codify and collate an impossible new reality into itself. The data presented doesn't make any logical sense. There's never been anything like this event, like COVID-19. So there's no way to connect or relate it to anything else. It doesn't fit. The brain cannot make this new reality fit. Eventually, the brain will understand that this loss can't fit inside the structures that used to be. It will have to make new pathways, new mental relationships, wiring this loss into the person you're becoming. And this takes time. It's not just you. Be patient with yourself. Allow the grace and the hope of Christ to be a pinhole of light in your dark moments. When I read Megan Devine's book, I keep thinking about something that is a really particular focus for us in our Players Box ministry, because we help students deal with mental health issues and mental strengthening and combining that with their spiritual identity in Christ. Look at these verses. Romans 12:2, don't conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What I would say in the application of that to our grief culture is don't grieve like most of America grieves. We don't do this well. But have a transformation of the way you think and talk about it. That's what we're hoping to achieving in this series. Or what about 2 Corinthians 10:5? We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. In other words, all of these emotions and thoughts that are jumbled about and these new connections that are trying to wire themselves in my brain neurologically, spiritually, whatever the mystery of that is, I am not a victim. I am going to take those thoughts captive. And then look at this one. As some of you know, this is what I'm really focusing on in this season of my life. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. Think about these things. So I began to be, as I had mentioned to many, my thinking had started getting dark back in June. I just started, there's so much change coming my way, and just challenges in life that I realized I got to take captive my thoughts. And so I got a little journal, and I came up with this plan that I call the 4-8 focus plan. It's based on Philippians 4:8. And so look at this on the screen. For example, if you did what I did today, you would do this. You'd write September 20th. And then true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, vertically down the page. And then that day, or the next day too, or 3 days, however long it takes, you look for things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. You look for things. Think about how important that is to take your thoughts captive. When your brain's rewiring, nothing feels right side up. Nothing does. In the era of such political dissension, for example, nothing feels true. So the importance of finding and getting your brain preoccupied with looking for those things that are true, that are noble, is so important. If you are in grief right now, you can do this at your level, because one of the powers of doing what the scriptures say, doing this is you preoccupy your mind. You're taking your thoughts captive. And then when you fill that list out, you write September, whatever the date is, and you start it again. You start a new one. True, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. Because here it is, your brain needs positive distraction while it rewires. We all do. If right now you're thinking, I'm crazy, you're probably not. It's not just you. Right now, we're all a little bit crazy. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with each other, because God is at work. He has promised us that no matter what level of grief we are experiencing, He's at work. And He will finish that job until we meet Christ face to face. This week, make sure you take time to delve into our group questions. Do it with someone that you're in community with. Question 1. Loss of vitality, time, companionship, and idealism. Which of those 4 is particularly relevant to you right now? Think of a recent loss of something or someone. Which of the 10 stages of grief are you particularly remembering right now that really stand out to you? And then, can you take the Philippians 4:8 challenge? Start with September 20th or 19th if you're watching this today. And when you're finished with that list, write down the date and start a new list. Preoccupy your mind on the many things in this life that God provides us every day that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, and you will be transformed, even in grief, by the renewing of your mind. By the renewing of your mind. Right now, we're going to sing a song that reminds us that God is in it all, through the highs and through the lows. Life is love and life is loss. God never changes.
Oh, how high would I climb mountains if the mountains were where you hide? Oh, how far I'd scale the valleys if you grace the other side. Oh, how long have I chased rivers from lowly seas to where they rise? Against the rush of grace descending from the source of its supply. And in the highlands and the heartache, you're neither more or less inclined. I would search and stop at nothing. You're just not that hard to find. I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows. No less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands, in the heartache, all the same. Ooh. sense the rush of grace descending from the soul.